Workers around the world are gearing up to observe this year's Workers' Day on Saturday. As usual, organized labor here at home is also preparing to observe May Day, as it is popularly known, albeit under a drastically changed landscape since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic over a year ago. The commemoration. This year marks the second Workers' Day commemoration since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. Last year's May Day came at the height of the total economic shutdown to limit the spread of the pandemic, which led to the loss of millions of jobs. The lockdown restrictions have since been relaxed a lot, allowing for a resumption of economic activity by and large. But the International Labour Organization says, unfortunately, job creation is yet to recover in a significant way.
As enterprises have opened, unfortunately, the work opportunities have not also been as forthcoming. The majority of the people who lost their jobs due to the lockdown are not able to recover those jobs.
Income inequality, which was already a big problem before the pandemic, has also become worse.
We're now facing a situation where 12 million people are unemployed. 42% of the country's population is unemployed when you use the extended definition of unemployment. Youth unemployment have now climbed to 63%. We facing a crisis of 47% of our Black African women unemployed. 52% of the people in the Eastern Cape are unemployed. Out of the 9 provinces, 8 of them have unemployment rate of above 40%. The levels of poverty have reached 70% of the population in terms of people living below the poverty line of about 6,700 rands. Inequalities have grown even bigger. The economy is on its knees. We lost 7% of the GDP last year. And even though there's a promise of a turnaround of 1 to 3%, but that is not going to be anywhere close to the levels of absorption of the unemployed that we need in this country.
No big May Day rallies are planned for this year. COSATU will hold a virtual commemoration which will be addressed by President Cyril Ramaphosa and SACP General Secretary Blake Nzimande. Bongeni Muchwa, SABC News, Johannesburg. Well, for more, I'm joined by COSATU Deputy President Mike Shingange, who, of course, is no stranger to the show. Mr. Shingange, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Bongeni and your viewers. Thanks for having us.
Now, I'm sure you'll agree with me that before the outbreak of COVID, the key word for Workers' Day was celebrating Workers' Day. But since COVID, it's really difficult to use that word anymore, given the bleak scenario that has been painted by the speakers before you now. Would you agree that maybe to say we're going to be celebrating May Day on Saturday is not easy to say at this time?
No, well, you're correct. We were always celebrating this historic International Day of Workers across the globe. But of course, the challenges have always been there. And when we celebrate, looking at our track record and remembering those who came before us, some of whom laid down their lives for this day to be recognized as a holiday. We're also taking stock of the challenges of the day and also confronting the challenges of the moving forward in terms of the struggles that workers are supposed to embark on in order to liberate themselves. But for the second year running now, correct, we're celebrating it in a more muted way because we are not able to come together as workers to indeed be in the celebratory mood. We're going to do it via methods that we have never used them before for the second year running now. But like you correctly said, we also have very little to celebrate except to commemorate the victories of the workers in those many decades ago. But as things stand now, you will know that many workers have lost their job during this pandemic. Our economy was not actually doing well even before the pandemic. but the pandemic has exacerbated that. Many employers are retrenching workers. Many employers are walking away from collective bargaining agreements. Many employers are actually cutting down the benefits of the workers. So the number of unemployment is ever growing, is increasing, and those few who are still in the workplace are now left with a burden to shoulder in order to provide for those of their fellow citizens that are not working and keeping this economy going.
Now, of course, you as COSATU participated in the drafting of the Economic Recovery Plan at NETLEC. There was a lot of fanfare when that plan was announced. What has happened since then?
Well, like every time we will come together as the people of South Africa and put ideas that we think that must help to drive the economy forward. However, not every one of us have got the responsibility to implement. It is now left to those who are in the state to make sure that those recovery plans are put into practice and that they trickle down to the downtrodden masses of our people. You will know that when the budget that was presented earlier this year in February did very little to actually put meat into the bones of those recovery plans. So that remains a disappointment. That has always been the case with many progressive or at least promising policies that will have been collectively agreed upon. We're still hopeful, though, that as people in various departments go and do their work, they must actually anchor their work on those pillars of the economic recovery plan, because at least that's a bit of a hope that we have. It's not the perfect one, because the economy needed a recovery even before COVID came. But we think we need to do a post-COVID recovery plan that is going to be a building block for a more sustainable policy, trajectory of the economy in this country. That is going to serve as a turning point to break away from the structural economy that we have adopted since we came, that we have never tempered with since the days of apartheid.
Now, of course, flowing out of the budget this year, over 100 million rands has been wiped out the budget of the CCMA. Of course, something that you yourselves have described as a threat to the system of worker protections in the country. In terms of the public service, there is a 0%, there's a wage freeze and a 0% on the table. We've got an offer of 2.8% in local government from SALGA. It's quite a lot of issues that seem to be on your plate at the moment as you move into this May Day on Saturday.
Yes, exactly. That is what we will be communicating through our president in terms of the challenge that we are faced, but what COSATU is resolving going forward. Because indeed, the pandemic has necessitated that a number of employers take advantage of it by retrenching and ill-treating workers. It is unfortunate, therefore, that at this time of crisis where workers need protection from the institutions that were created to provide remedy, government then cut its budget for CCMA. The massive retrenchments that are taking place, the Section 189 that is taking place, there's no space in the CCMA because the capacity of the CCMA to handle this case of the most vulnerable workers that needs protection is actually curtailed by the cutting of budget by the state. Indeed, that too is actually an attack on the collective bargaining, because part of collective bargaining and the rights of the trade union or the duties of the trade unions is to, through institutions of bargaining council and the CCMA, to represent and defend their workers when they are under attack from their employer. Now, at the time when the employers are on the rampage, is at a time when the powers and the rights of workers are being curtailed by the state. You talked about the zero budget that has been presented by the state to the workers of the public service. Again, it's not just that only. It's the totality of the whole range of other things that they've done to renege, to mutilate, and actually to spit on the collective agreement, which is the bedrock of the democratization of the workplace.
Well, Mr. Shingange, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there. We've run out of time, but it's a pleasure to have you on, and we look forward to seeing your event on Saturday, where the president of the country, of course, will be the keynote speaker as well. And of course, we will bring you other events that should be observed around the country to commemorate Workers' Day on Saturday. Up next, the Alternative Investor with Nastasia Arendse. Stay with us.